Hi, I'm Clarissa Moll, producer and moderator of the Bulletin. Here's a short clip from one of our segments in this week's episode. To hear the whole conversation, visit the link in our show notes or search for The Bulletin on your favorite podcast platform. We're just 12 days away from the presidential election. 40 states have already begun voting, and all eyes are trained right now on a few swing states who are positioned to decide the election. Now, I grew up in the swing state of New Hampshire, and election season was always really exciting. Politicians visit our school. We got to attend campaign events and meet candidates face to face. But this isn't the case for most Americans. For them, swing states is a phrase they hear a lot, but if you don't live in one, you may not understand the significant role they play in elections or why the stuff going on right now in places like Pennsylvania and Georgia matters so much. You may even be having a little bit of FOMO. Joining us as a tour guide to the swing states and the latest events in them is NBC News analyst and friend of the Bulletin, Mike Murphy. Mike, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Mike, could you play Rick Steves for us a little bit here and give us a tour of Pennsylvania and Georgia? What's happening there right now when it comes to the two campaigns, and what are the sites we shouldn't miss?
So the way this caper works, and great to be here with everybody, the Electoral College is what elects the president. We have a system where normally the popular vote and the Electoral College track together, but not so much lately. It's happened 5 times in American history, all of American history, that the Electoral College total and the popular vote are different. And of those 5 times, it didn't happen for 100 years, and then it started happening in the last 20 years. We've had 2 of those. So, by the way, you know who invented the Electoral College? Alexander Hamilton. That is the one song that never made the musical, because it may not be. There's some people questioning the idea of is it smart, but it's the way the system works. So there are about 7 states that, because of the Electoral College, probably are the fulcrum states that pick, and they're very close. And so it's a little weird. But most votes in a presidential election don't have that much impact. It is the swing counties of the swing states, a relatively small number of people, 250,000, maybe 450,000 across about 7 states. And those states are Pennsylvania, which you hear a lot about. And by the way, it changes every couple of years. Florida and Ohio used to be in the key list of swing states. But as demography changes, as political patterns change, so does the list. New Hampshire is famously powerful in primaries. So a New Hampshire primary voter in the old days had the power of 10,000 regular voters. But now New Hampshire's become more of a blue state. So the swings are Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Those are often called the metal benders, or I like to call them the pop states. I'm from Michigan, and we say pop, not soda, same as our cheesy brothers in Wisconsin or our friends in Pennsylvania. Then there's the Sun Belt swing states, which are basically Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, and some people argue it's kind of almost in the club, North Carolina, though it still tilts pretty Republican, though polls have shown it's a battleground. So there you go, and it's putting together the jigsaw puzzle of those states. And by the way, if you want the play-at-home game, there's kind of a fun free app for your phone called 270 to Win, which is like a jigsaw puzzle where you can move the states around. You can look at how they used to vote, and you can kind of play Electoral College Candy Crush there. So those states get most of the attention, most of the candidate visits, and most of the spending. If you own a local television or radio station there, you're spending a lot of time down at the Bentley dealership picking out your new car, because money is flying in the door as the campaigns are fighting it out. And a few of those states have other competitive races too. Arizona has a big Senate race. Nevada has a big Senate race. So right now, the so-called blue wall of the pop states, which again are Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, have been where the Democrats, starting with Biden, who was still in trouble, and Harris, who's still in a coin flip race, have had a slight edge, while former President Trump has done a little better, at least in the polling to date, in Georgia and Arizona. Nevada has been moving toward the Ds. So a lot of this boils down to, can she put it together in the big 3 metal bending pop states, or does she lose one, which means you got to make it up. You got to cover your problem there. Lose Pennsylvania or Michigan. and Pennsylvania has more electoral college votes. It's the biggest of those three. You make it up with a Georgia or the much pined after desert combo, Arizona and Nevada, if you can put them both together. Now, Trump's had a few point lead in Arizona, though. The Democratic Senate candidate there, Ruben Gallegos, is doing quite well against Carrie Lake, who's getting a lot of orders from Venus. And so even the Republicans have fallen off her. He's going to win that Senate seat. And I've seen two polls in the last 48 hours, private polls, which tend to be a little higher quality than the media polls, showing a tied race in Arizona. If that's true, that's a lucky sign for her, not only for maybe getting the desert double done, but second, if she's tied in Arizona, it probably means things are a little better in North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania than they might have been 2 weeks ago. But all these polls are within what we call the margin of error. So they kind of look like, oh, she's 1.2 points ahead. Well, the margin of error is 3 to 4 points on each number. So I wouldn't fly an airplane through the fog near mountains with the margin of error as my guide.
Mike, there are a lot of people who have extreme anxiety, one way or the other, about this presidential race, who are looking kind of doom scrolling all day with this number of mail-in votes are coming in, and it's this many Democrats, this many Republicans. Here are these polls. How accurate are any of these in-trail reading things this close to an actual election?
No, they will drive you crazy. And my favorite one, it kind of reminds me of people who can tell the future of the stock market by looking at squiggly lines and saying, oh, this line has an extra squiggly in it, so sell Dow Chemical. It is not predictive of the future. And we have so much mail-in and early voting now. Many states kind of release what's coming in by party. So you can say, oh, Democrats are running 2,200 votes in Cobb County in Georgia ahead of where they were. The early vote thing is highly misleading. You can compare it to history and see trends, but trends don't dictate an outcome. And by the way, the one we're comparing it to was during COVID, which was a different global circumstance. So, people are so, as you say, they're doom scrolling out of nervousness. The New York Times has a thing where they project, and I tweeted making fun of it because I said, this was like 2 days ago, I'm getting all these texts, is it over? Is it over? From my most neurotic Democratic friends. I couldn't figure out why they were doing that. And then I looked, and there was the New York Times Predictatronic thing saying 0.202%, race tilts toward Trump. And now there are lines outside every psychiatrist office in Los Angeles. And I was like, the margin of error. No professionals look at it this way. We look at history. We look at new factors. For example, North Carolina, traditionally Republican, but she's been close, and the candidate running for governor who has a Republican nomination is, I'll be generous, a very weak candidate. So that could, that race, maybe that's the thumb on the scale that makes North Carolina more interesting than usual. A few polls showing within the margin of error, interesting. And the horrible, tragic hurricane hit Asheville, which tends to be a Democratic town. So maybe they'll have trouble getting the normal Democratic vote out of there as people try to rebuild their lives tragically. Is that a factor? So, you look at concrete things against history, and then you look as, right, exactly. You also look at is there a local state issue? Michigan is the kind of king of this. It's the home of the largest Arab American community in the United States. By the way, you go down to the FBI or the counterterrorism people, they will say, thank God for Dearborn, Michigan, because it's where the government recruits a lot of their native Arabic speakers, which is one reason that we don't have as much domestic terror in the U.S. We're very good at those communities standing up for us and helping, despite all the kind of racist crap that can go around on the internet. Anyway, with the current fight against Hezbollah in Lebanon and everything, that community has relatives and stuff, and it tends to be a more Democratic voting community. There's some tension there. Interestingly, what the media misses about that, you just learned this working Michigan politics a lot. You have an Arab Muslim community there that is very patriotic, pro-American, but does have relatives and people in the Gaza Strip and places like that. And with the cell phone, you can hear about your cousin's life and death problems very quickly. There's also a very large Christian, Lebanese, and Iraqi, Chaldean community there, which has historically not been completely sympathetic to the Muslim community, but now with Lebanon and Beirut and the violence of the conflict, of which I'm on the Israeli side, but the politics of it, that community is feeling pain now. Will that affect the election in Michigan, which, it could be a 30, 40,000, 20,000 vote margin? And then the electric car issue is a big thing there, not really in any other state, but Donald Trump's been saying electric cars are going to put you out of work in Detroit. Not true, but scary and in some ways effective.
I wonder if polls aren't an accurate view of how things are going to pan out. Are the campaign maneuverings of the two campaigns indicative of how they feel things are leading? I think about Donald Trump's splash campaign of the last couple of weeks, his appearance at McDonald's, some pretty spicy comments at campaign events. Is this an entertainer who's pulling out all the stops here as the finish line nears, or is it a desperate candidate who's trying to grab a lead? As we think about the analysis, should we be paying more attention to what the campaigns are doing right now instead of these poll numbers?
And also, I would add geography. Kamala Harris is speaking in Houston, not a swing state.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's an insight. It's a tell, as poker players would say, because when in doubt, listen to the rhetoric, but watch the schedule. You have limited resources in the campaign. You only have so much time, which means so many events, and you choose where to put the events. And that is driven by where you think you want the candidate. Because when the candidate shows up, you dominate local television. It is a way to get free advertising. So sane campaigns spend an incredible amount of time on the schedule.
Listen to the full episode wherever podcasts are found.